Hi everyone, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Icebreaker. I got an arc of this book through, I think it was YALLFest was hosting a giveaway through Fierce Reads. There was a whole cycle, but thank you to the publisher for access to an e-arc of this book. So to start us off, I'm going to read the summary because I don't want to get it wrong, so let's do it. 17-year-old Mikey James III is a college freshman, a brother to 5 sisters, and a hockey legacy. With a father and a grandfather who have gone down in NHL history, Mikey is almost guaranteed the league's top draft spot. The only person standing in his way is Jason Caulfield, a contender for the #1 spot and Mikey's infuriatingly attractive teammate. When the rivalry turns to something more, Mikey will have to decide what he really wants and what he's willing to risk for it. Okay, y'all, so I have a lot of mixed feelings about this book. So as a more objective reader, I gave this 3 stars. I think that overall it's pretty solid, it's pretty good for a debut. It's, it's showing the signs of a debut, but it's also showing potential. But for my own personal taste, I would give this 2 stars. I just did not vibe with it the way I wanted to vibe with it. The main reason I'm publicly rating it 3 stars on Storygraph and Goodreads is because I think a lot of the problems I have with this book are more subjective and because of my own reading preference than anything else. Like, for example, when I first started this book, I was really annoyed by the so-called rivalry in the book. Now, I still think that element was relatively weak in the story, but I also think that I have a skewed perspective, and that is because I am a huge fan of the Foxhole Court, but the Foxhole Court is a mess. It is not a good sports book. Like, it's not an accurate portrayal of what an actual team would be like. But because there was so much toxicity in those interactions, I already have a threshold of what an actual rivalry is to me that this book did not match at all. Did it make sense that it was not as extreme as the Foxhole Court? Of course. Naturally, that made sense. But at the same time, I was just unsatisfied. I felt like Jason was being really hostile for no reason at the beginning of the book. I felt as well like there was a lot of hot and cold stuff going on that I didn't feel like it was paced well in order for me to personally enjoy it. And so overall, I just find the rivalry thing here, the rivals to lovers romance, very lackluster. In general, I found the romance to be unsatisfying. Although I did enjoy some of the interactions between Jason and Mikey, I overall was not invested in their relationship. If anything, I thought that there was some humor and like nice banter going on, but it didn't feel enough to get me swooning over the romance or anything like that. In addition, I just found it irritating that Mikey was... I feel like this is like a spoiler. So, okay, I'll do a spoiler warning, and then when you don't see the word spoiler up above, you can return. So one of the things that I found annoying about the romance is that Mikey uses their quote-unquote rivalry as an excuse to avoid making their relationship more serious, because eventually Mikey and Jason like each other enough that they start a whole like friends with benefits situation. And each time Mikey feels like he's getting too emotionally attached, he starts saying like, oh, well, Jason doesn't really like me. He doesn't like me. This is just something we do. And even though that was realistic, it was super, super annoying. It got on my nerves. It just, no. Just no. Apart from the romance, I just feel like this book was lying to me about the depth of the relationships that Mikey had with other characters. Like, for example, one of the things that starts being said a lot is that Mikey and his teammates are really close, and they're closer than he has been with other team members he's been with before. Like, when he's been on other teams, he wasn't as close to his team members as he is now. But I didn't buy that, because genuinely, Mikey seriously engaged with 2 of his team members, 3 if we include Jason as one of those team members. And I'm like, we have a bunch of other boys on this team that Mikey either almost never interacts with, or interacts in such passing that to pretend to tell me that he is like so meaningfully engaged with his teammates is absurd. Like, it was just not believable. I was not buying it. I was not into it. However, I will mention that those 2 teammates that he was closer to, which were Barbie and Dorian, were precious. Like, I genuinely could have read a whole book about them. The 2 of them are besties, and they are iconic, and they support each other so much, and they're very comfortable in their masculinity and showing displays of affection while being sure that that doesn't threaten their masculinity. They were icons. Okay, in short, Dorian and Barbie were icons, and I would have loved to have followed the 2 of them, because amazing. And then the other major relationships here that I was hot and cold about were Mikey and his sisters. In some instances, I did find their relationships believable, the dynamics between them believable, and at other times I felt like I was being told that they were close to one another and that they loved each other a lot, but I didn't feel like I saw that. Not really. So it was just frustrating. I think the main relationship that I found the most believable was Mikey and his father. I did find the tension between them realistic, believable, and like it was more thoroughly developed in the story. The other thing I did not enjoy about this book was the ending. It was completely and utterly a cop-out. It was so unsatisfying. And among all the other unsatisfying things going on in this book, it was just kind of the last straw for me. I'm like, you're going to put me through all of this, and at the end of the day, you're not even going to actually do a satisfying conclusion? Like I just need to understand why. Like, okay, I understand why the choice was made, but I did not feel like it was satisfying. In addition, at the end of the book, Mikey reveals something that just doesn't make sense, because what happens is that he makes a decision at one point in the narrative, and after he makes that decision, we jump to months later where he has presumably grown as a person. And so he makes an announcement that you're like, that's cute, that's sweet, but when did we get here? When did this character development happen? Why did we block it out entirely from the narrative? Questions I have. Now, one of the reasons this is a 2-star instead of a 1-star for me personally is the bisexual anxiety and depression representation. Now, those 3 things were truly impeccable. The way Mikey was characterized in terms of his depression, his anxiety, and as a closeted bisexual boy, that was really strong. Really strong. You could see in his behavior how his anxiety and depression affected his actions, and you could also see how his depression and anxiety influenced his desire to remain in the closet. So honestly, if that had been the main focus of this book, if this has just been like Mikey's own healing journey because he's struggling through the fact that he has depression, but he doesn't want to admit it, if that had been the major focus of this, I think I might have enjoyed it more. But precisely because we tried to add in a romance with a flaky rivalry and just everything else, I felt like it watered down my enjoyment and my ability to connect with the main character, because it just strayed attention to other things that didn't feel as important as his interior journey. So yeah, overall I wanted to love this, but I really didn't. I didn't buy the romance. I didn't buy that the protagonist had a strong relationship with his teammates. I was so about his relationship with his sisters and his father. And ultimately, I just wish there hadn't been a rivalry in this book. Like, I think it might have been fine if it had still had the romance element, but I would have preferred to eliminate the rivalry. I don't know. Maybe the problem is that I am not a hockey fan. I don't know much about hockey. I know close to nothing about it. So in general, the rivalry didn't make any sense to me. I thought it was silly, and I also thought that it was just inconsistent in the narrative itself. So I don't know, y'all. I wish I had more positive things to say. Anyway, so that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you would like to follow me on any of my social media, I will have the links to that down below in the description. But for now, see you next time.